Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We're going to be learning today Mir Hashem Daf Yud Daled Amud Aleph. We're continuing to learn Hilchas Chalamayid, and we begin today on the bottom line of Yud Gimel Amud Beis with a new Siman Tavkuf Ben Beis. Shaloi Lasos Malacha LaAcherim BeChalamayid Ela Bechinam. You are not allowed to do malacha on Chalamayid for others, only if you do it for nothing. If you do it free, if you do it with no pay. Ubay beis seifim, and here we have two seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sef Aleph, Afilu malachais hamutarais. Even the types of malacha that we have said are mutter to do on Chalamayid. So things that would normally be forbidden on Chalamayid, but we said that you're allowed to do them on Chalamayid because you're doing them l'tzarech hamayid. So let's say, for example, if you have to repair a garment on Chalamayid, normally you're not allowed to sew on Chalamayid. But if you have a tzarech hamayid, if you have something that you need for the mayid, you need for Yom Tov, you're allowed to sew that garment as long as you do it either as a ma'aseh hedyot, if you're an amateur and you do a ma'aseh hedyot, or even if you're a tailor, if you're an uman, if you do it with a shinoi, then you're allowed to do that malacha. However, says the Mechaber, even the type of malacha that normally would be permitted to be done, l'tzarech hamayid on Chalamayid, you're only allowed to do it, einan mutaris la'asaisan, it's only permissible to do that malacha, ela la'atzmai, only if you're doing it for yourself, for your own personal needs, oy la'acherim, or you can do it for somebody else, if you do it bechinam, if you do it for nothing, if you do it free. Aval b'schar, but if you do it for pay, then it's forbidden. Let's take a look here in the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is Katan Aleph. Malachais hamutaris. Even the types of malacha that are ordinarily mutter to be done on Chalamayid. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Kegain, for example, kol davar shu l'tzarech hamayid. Any malacha that you're doing l'tzarech hamayid, it's a malacha that you're doing for the needs of Yom Tov, deboi shinoi, where you're allowed to do that malacha, but if you're an uman, if you're a professional, then you have to do it with a shinui. You have to make some kind of shinui. Like we said, by sewing, if you're a tailor, so you have to do it with a shinui. You have to make wide stitches. You have to make the stitches up and down so it's not straight. Or, if you're not an uman, if you're a hedyot, says the Chavetz Chaim, v'chein hedyot, if you're an amateur, she'etir lo litvar kedarkoi. Then, in the case of sewing, you could sew in the normal way. V'chein, similarly, kama dvarim, many other things that we've learned about, she'asru, that are normally forbidden to be done on Chalamayid, mishum tircha, av she'ena malacha mamish. We've seen that there are a lot of things that are forbidden on Chalamayid, not because they're a malacha, they're not, let's say, one of the lamates malachas that are considered malachas that are forbidden on Shabbos and Yom Tov, but they're also because of tercha. So there are a lot of things you're not allowed to do on Chalamayid only because of tercha. Yet, l'tzarech hamayid, you're allowed to do many of those things, but you're only allowed to do it for yourself. If you're doing it to help out somebody else, then you have to do it bechinam. You have to do it for nothing. You're not allowed to do it for pay. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Beis. Aval b'schar also, to do it for pay, any of these things is forbidden. Now, why is it forbidden for you to perform malacha for somebody else if you're getting paid? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, the Kabbalah schar b'mayid k'uvda d'chayil damya. Very interesting concept that the Chavetz Chaim brings down here from the Rosh in Mayid Katan, where the Rosh says that to take pay for doing some kind of labor on Chalamayid, that's an uvda d'chayil. Excuse me just 1 second here. Looks like there's some kind of problem with my stream. 1 second. Okay, it should come back. All right. So, taking pay to do labor, that's an uvda d'chayil. That's something that's now transforming Chalamayid into a weekday. And we can't transform Chalamayid into a weekday. So the Kabbalah schar b'mayid k'uvda d'chayil damya. Taking pay to do work on Chalamayid, that's an uvda d'chayil. Continues the Chavetz Chaim and he says, Yesh min ha-paiskim, you should know there are those paiskim shesayvrin, who hold the im'i efshaloi labalabayis lasois hamalacha ela be'elu. Let's say you have work that you have to do on Chalamayid that you're allowed to do on Chalamayid. It falls under the rubric of one of the things that we said you're allowed to do on Chalamayid. So let's say it's a case of a davar ovid, and now you're allowed to do malacha on Chalamayid. But it's not something that you can do by yourself. It's something that you need help with. So you need laborers to come help you take care of that davar ovid. So yesh ben ha-paiskim, there are those paiskim she'servin that hold the im'i efshaloi lebalabayis laseis hamalacha ela be'elu. If it's impossible for the balabayis who needs to do this permitted malacha on Chalamayid, it's impossible for him to do it on his own. He needs helpers, he needs workers. V'heim einam roitzim heladafka b'schar. And the workers say, look, we'll do it, but we have to get paid. Then then you're allowed to pay them, since the work that they're doing is a tzarech hamayid. Since it's a tzarech hamayid, then they could receive pay. Continues the mechaber on the top line, if you dalet amud aleph. Umiyu, however, even though I'm telling you that there is an isser of doing work and accepting pay on Chalamayid of uvda dechayil, umiyu, nevertheless, if you're not receiving a fixed payment, so it's not that you're doing work and you're getting paid $20 an hour. Instead, the pay that you're getting is that you're going to eat your meals together with the one who's hiring you, then mutter, then it's permissible. And the Mishnah Berurah says in Ice Cut and Gimel, if you're not getting a fixed pay, instead you're eating your meals together with the one who's hiring you, then it's mutter. Explains the Chavetz Chaim why is that. Dirshu loy heavy uvda dechayil. The Chavetz Chaim says because now it no longer seems to be an uvda dechayil. And it took a look in the Aruch HaShulchan. The language of the Aruch HaShulchan is mipnei shebechayil ein haragilus beschar kazeh. This is not a normal employer-employee setup that you would do during the week. Normally somebody hires you, he pays you a paycheck. He doesn't invite you to come eat your meals with him. So that already doesn't look like an uvda dechayil, says the Aruch HaShulchan, and continues the Chavetz Chaim, v'shari l'tzarech hamayid, and therefore an arrangement of this type would be mutter l'tzarech hamayid. Okay, so far the Mechaber has told us over here, even though we've learned in so many simanim already before, we've learned all of the rules as to when you're allowed to do malacha on Chalamayid. So you're allowed to do malacha on Chalamayid if it's l'tzarech hamayid. But if you're doing malacha on Chalamayid l'tzarech hamayid, you have to do it as a ma'aseh hedyot. Or if you're an uman, you have to do it with a shinui. You're allowed to do malacha l'tzarech eichel nefesh. You're allowed to do malacha l'tzarech machshirei eichel nefesh. You're allowed to do malacha if it's a davar ovid. If it's a davar ovid, then you're allowed to do even a ma'aseh uman. So we have all of these cases where you're allowed to do malacha on Chalamayid. Nevertheless, says the Mechaber, even when you're allowed to do malacha on Chalamayid, you're only allowed to do that malacha when you need to do that malacha for yourself. If somebody else needs the malacha, so if you want to help him do the malacha, you could do the malacha for him, but you could only do it bechinam. You're not allowed to get paid, because getting paid, that's already an uvda dechayil. You're not allowed to get paid for doing that malacha. You could do it for him bechinam. You could do it for him for nothing. That you could do. Now, says the Ramah, Haggah, the davar aved mutar lasais afilu b'schar kotzuv. However, if the malacha needs to be done in order to prevent a financial loss, if we're talking about something which is a davar avud, then the Ramah says, then you're allowed to do malacha for somebody else, and you're even allowed to get paid. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah here. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and dalid, the davar avud. Why are you allowed to get paid to do malacha to prevent his davar avud? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the same way we allow an employer a person is allowed to go hire a laborer and pay him to do work if the laborer doesn't have money, he doesn't have what to eat, even if it's not a tzarech hamayid. So let's say you know a Yiddish auto mechanic. And Pasha doesn't have food to put on the table. So you say, you know what? I'll give him my car. Let him do an oil change. It's not a tzarech hamayid. I don't need it done now. It's not a davar ha'avod. Maybe it's not even 3,000 miles since I did the last oil change. Certainly, I'm not going to get any damage to the car if I don't have the oil change done now. Still, since the Yiddish auto mechanic doesn't have food to put on his table, you're allowed to go have the oil change done on your car, and you're allowed to go ahead and pay him to do this work in order to support him. So, even though this malacha is being done completely not l'tzarech hamayid, still hitiru lebalabayis. We still allow the balabayis. We allow the owner of the car to give in the car to have the malacha done, kedei sheyeh toiva l'poil, in order to benefit the auto mechanic, in order to benefit the worker, so that he should have food. Hachinami, similarly, yesh lahater l'poil lital schar. An employer, a laborer, is allowed to take pay, which he's normally not allowed to do, b'shvil toivas balabayis, for the benefit of the balabayis. So what's the Chavetz Chaim saying over here? He's drawing a comparison. He's saying normally you're not allowed to have an oil change done on your car on Chalamayid, because that's labor that's not being done l'tzarech hamayid. But we allow you to give in your car to have the oil change done on Chalamayid in order to benefit the auto mechanic who Pashut needs the money, who doesn't have food to put on his table. The same way, says the Chavetz Chaim, we allow the auto mechanic who has money, we allow an auto mechanic to go ahead and do work on your car and get paid if you need it done because it's a tzarech hamayid, it's a davar ha'avod. Not a tzarech hamayid, a davar ha'avod. If you have something which is a davar ha'avod, if it's not done right now, your car is going to get destroyed or whatever it is, so the work must be done now. So that's a heter for you. You, the car owner, have a heter to get the work done on your car because it's a davar ha'avod. Why is the auto mechanic allowed to take pay? So he's allowed to take pay, which he's normally not allowed to do, in order to benefit you, the same way you're sometimes allowed to get work done that you're normally not allowed to get done in order to benefit him. Okay. And on this, the Mechaber said, let's go to Ois Katan Hay. Then the Ramah said, Mutar lasei safilu, such malacha you're allowed to get done, even if it's b'schar kotzev, even if he's going to pay you a fixed amount of money, a regular paycheck. Ritzayna loymar, what the Ramah wants to say over here is, afilu shaloi l'tzarech hamayid v'hu ma'aseh uman. If you could be talking about something that's bechlal not a tzarech hamayid, whatever this davar of it is, it's not something which is necessary for Yom Tov, and in order to fix it, it's going to take a ma'aseh uman. Still, the laborer is allowed to come and do the work and get paid in order to take care of your davar ha'avod. V'ayin bebir halacha dibur amaschal afilu de'im yachal limtzay akum lozeh. The one who needs the work done to avoid the davar ha'avod, if he could find a non-Jew to do the work, nachin shelo yiskar Yisraelim. It's better that he shouldn't go ahead and hire a Yid to do work on Yom Tov, even on Chalamayid, even though that Yid is allowed to do the work on Chalamayid and he's allowed to get paid. But better don't put the Yid in that position where he should do malacha on Chalamayid and get paid for doing malacha on Chalamayid. Better give it to a non-Jew to do. So if you could find a non-Jewish auto mechanic, give it to a non-Jewish auto mechanic. Now there's an interesting biur halacha here on Yud Gimel on the Beis on the bottom. Biur halacha dibur amaskal afilu malachos hamutaros. Says the biur halacha here, nira la'anias daiti. Chavetz Chaim says that it appears, in his humble opinion, debedavar shehu oichel nefesh. How about if we know you're allowed to do malacha for oichel nefesh on Chalamayid, you're allowed to cook. So let's say you want to hire somebody to cook for you. Mutar l'paya lasei safilu b'schar. You're allowed to hire somebody to cook for you on Chalamayid, and he's allowed to cook for you, and he's allowed to get paid. Now why? He's doing malacha. Now it's malachas hamutaris. He's doing malacha that's mutar on Chalamayid, but he's not doing it for himself, he's doing it for you. So why is he allowed to get paid? He's allowed to get paid. Explains the Chavetz Chaim, because if you're going to tell me he's not going to allowed to get paid, so then kol ma shenizkar b'simin tafkuf lamed gimel, the mutar l'tzarech hamayid, then all of the labors that are done l'tzarech eichel nefesh, that we learned in Siman Tav Kuf Lamed Gimel that you're allowed to do when they're l'tzarech hamayid, kigoyin, for example, atrina, grinding grain into flour, uketzitzatz eitzim min hamachuber, cutting wood that's attached to the ground in order to use it for firewood, lahatel shechar, or to set down beer, ukahai gavna, kol inyani oichel nefesh, all of the different malachas that are mutter and chalamayid for tzarech oichel nefesh. If you're not allowed to pay to have somebody do them, yitzarech hakol asais ba'atzmai. So you're telling me that everybody has to do it by themselves? You're certainly not going to find anybody who's going to do this for nothing. So what are you telling me? You're telling me that l'tzarech oichel nefesh, you need flour on chalamayid. And we learned that you're allowed to grind flour on chalamayid if you need flour, l'tzarech hamayid, l'tzarech oichel nefesh. So what are you telling me now? You're telling me that the only way you can get flour is if you grind it for yourself? How about baking? Yes, you're allowed to bake chalas on chalamayid, l'tzarech hamayid, l'tzarech oichel nefesh. But you're telling me the bakery is not allowed to open? The bakery is not allowed to bake challah? So on chalamayid, everybody has to bake their own challah? You're not allowed to have takeout food on chalamayid because Meal Mart's not allowed to go ahead and cook the food. They're doing malacha for you and they're getting paid? Chavetz Chaim says no. Certainly, any malacha that's required for oichel nefesh, you're allowed to do it for others, and you're even allowed to get paid. And he brings a raya from this Ramah that we just learned, that says that if you have a davar avod, somebody else is allowed to do malacha for you, so that you should avoid your davar avod, and he's allowed to get paid. So he brings a raya from there. He says that if that's what the halacha is by davar avod, hu adin le'inyan oichel nefesh. The same thing would apply for oichel nefesh, because oichel nefesh is even adif from a davar avod. We find that oichel nefesh is more mutter than a davar avod, because when it comes to a davar avod, let's say you have a davar avod. Let's say you have wheat in the field, and you know that if it doesn't get picked soon, it's going to get ruined. It's going to get overripe, and it's going to get ruined, or it's going to get rained on, and it's going to get ruined. Are you allowed to say 2 days before Yom Tov, boy, I can see I need to do that harvest soon. All right, I'll do it on chalamayid. So you're being mechaven malachtoi lamayid by a davar avod. Are you allowed to do that? No. We learned that you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to be mechaven malachtoi for chalamayid when it's a davar avod. But oichel nefesh, you are allowed to be mechaven malachtoi l'chalamayid. You're allowed to say, I'll do my cooking on why? Maybe you should have to cook for the second day's Yom Tov before the first day's Yom Tov. Why are you allowed to cook on chalamayid? No, you're allowed to be mechaven malachtoi of oichel nefesh. Why don't you have to cook all your food for chalamayid before Yom Tov? No, you're allowed to be mechaven malachtoi l'chalamayid b'oichel nefesh. So it's more kal than davar avod. So if the Ramah says that for a davar avod you're allowed to do malacha for acherim and you're even allowed to get paid on chalamayid, then for oichel nefesh certainly. Now we go to Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber, Kol malacha mutar la'asoisa al yidei poil she'ein la ma'yoichal kedei sheyistaker v'yarviach. You're allowed to have any kind of malacha done on chalamayid by an employee who doesn't have what to eat, so that he should be able to make money. So you want to give in your shirts to be cleaned, you want to give in your pants to be tailored, you want to give in your car to be worked on. If you're giving it to somebody who doesn't have food to put on the table, you have a yid who doesn't have food to put on the table and he could do this work for you and get paid, you're allowed to give him the work to do, and he's allowed to do the work and he's allowed to get paid. Says the Chavetz Chaim back in Yudalet Amid Aleph, Ois Cotton Vav, Kol Malacha. This is true even if the malacha that he's doing for you is b'chalal not a tzarech hamayid. V'gam loy bo yishinoi, and he doesn't have to do it with his shinoi. If he's an uman, if he's a professional, he's a professional tailor, he can make beautiful straight seams and beautiful straight stitches. He doesn't have to do a shinoi, and it doesn't only have to be a ma'aseh hedyot. U'kedalael b'siman tavkuf lamed zayin sif tesvav ayin sham. We saw this over there, that a pile that doesn't have what to eat, everything could be done completely kedarkoi. It's cut in Zion. The words of the Mechaber is a laborer who doesn't have what to eat. Says the Chavetz Chaim, that means he doesn't have what to eat. Hainu she'ein lo klal lechol. He pashut doesn't have what to eat. Avalim yesh lo lechem u'mayim, if he has bread and water, so he has just basic sustenance. Also lo lasis malacha, then he's not allowed to do malacha and get paid. That he brings from the Magen Avram. V'yeshaimrim, that he does bring down here, if you look at the Shari Tzion, he's cutting your base from the El Yerabba, Berurah, he brings down Even if he has the basic necessities, what to eat, but he doesn't have what he needs for yomtiv, then he's allowed to do malacha. That the laborer still has to do his work bitzina. The guy who walks down the street and sees that the auto repair shop is open, he doesn't realize the financial situation of the Yiddish owner of the repair shop. He doesn't know that the guy doesn't have food to put on his table. Therefore, he could do the malacha, but he has to keep the gates down and everything he has to do it bitzina. If he can't do it pitzina, you're going to hear the noises of the air compressor outside on the street, so you can't mamish do it pitzina. He could do it even publicly. Since he doesn't have food, what to do what to put on the table. And this laborer is allowed to do the work, so that he should make money, and he should have harvacha, he should make profit. Even though maybe this fellow has stuff in his house that he could sell to raise capital, so really he could sell his washing machine, he could sell his mixer, and he could raise capital to have what to eat. He's still allowed to do malacha on chalamayid. He's not mechuyev to sell his couch to go raise money. He could do malacha on chalamayid to put food on his table. But if he has merchandise that he could sell, then better he should sell the merchandise and not do malacha. Furthermore, the poskim write, the malacha shemakabel b'shah she'ein la ma'yochal. If he accepts a job to do when he doesn't have food to put on the table, mutar lekabel schar, he could get paid. He can make a ton of money. He doesn't have to say, okay, you paid me enough to get bread and water, now I have to stop working because I have bread and water. No, if he took on a job because he didn't have food to put on the table, now he could do the job and he could make a lot of money on chalamayim. But once he finishes, he can't go ahead and accept another job because now he has the money that he needs. Okay, that concludes Siman Tavkuf Mem Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This Chav limud HaTorah should be Megan on God's Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shem should send Yeshua's and Refuah's to the Parnasa to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias God Tzedek with the hair of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.